help us go a long way. And we're going to start today, Earl, with the Guardians, who put up 14 runs yesterday. A little fun fact for you guys. It's the second time in Cleveland baseball history a Bell and a Ramirez have homered in the same game.
Wow.
Just a different iteration of Bell and Ramirez. This Bell doesn't have an E on the end of his name.
I think I would still take this version of the old version of Bell today.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
over Franmil Bell.
As like today, as constituted, like. Yeah,
Albert, I'd take Albert, bad, busted hip and all.
You know, Manny's still playing too. He's playing in he's playing A ball, low A ball, like somewhere in Nicaragua or something, dog.
Well, either way, it was a 14-1 thrashing over the Royals last night. Ramirez got it started with the grand slam early on. Then the Guardians kept piling on. Bo Naylor hit his first home run. We're going to get into the second part of this topic, which is how much of a lead can the Guardians build in first place moving forward. But let's start with the game last night. 14 runs. It's their highest offensive output of the season. I don't want to say are you surprised by the offensive output, but frankly, it has become so few and far between these offensive magnifications. Do you think bats are contagious? Like, are hot bats contagious in the sense that we saw last night, 3 home runs lead to 14 runs?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, streaks go both hot and cold. When a couple guys go cold, it can be contagious. When a couple guys get hot, it sort of relieves the pressure off everybody else, and that's also contagious. I mean, the Royals are a AAA team. That certainly helps. Like, hey, you got to feast when you can. And baseball is such a wonky game that stuff like this sometimes emerges out of nowhere. We saw it last night with Domingo Germán. He got absolutely destroyed in his last 2 starts and throws a perfect game last night. That's the nature of baseball. And so a team that's struggling can all of a sudden have an explosion and put it all together. You know, I don't think this means that this is the launching point for the Guardians to go on some power tear. But certainly it was long overdue, and it was good to see.
Yeah, sometimes in these games, you know, like Jason said, like, you know, when you're playing baseball, like, you know, you can have a doubleheader. The first doubleheader, you get shut out and get somebody throw a one-hitter or no-hitter on you. The next game, you come back, and all of a sudden, you have one of the best games you've had, 2 for 3, 3 for 4, maybe a couple RBIs, a few home runs. You know, you put double digits on the board. The hardest part about, you know, talking about baseball is kind of like projecting whether this is an anomaly or this is something that you're going to be able to consistently do on a consistent, regular basis. Like, you know, and I think at this point where you're almost 80 games into the season and you're 500, the Guardians are where they are. They're average, right? They're an average team when it comes to you know, their overall construction. They're a below average power team. They do pretty good in the field defensively, but I don't think this is going to be any sort of sign that they're going to start waking up hitting all these home runs now. I will say, you know, one of the guys that has been really that I've liked to watch and has really done some stuff is Naylor, not Bo Naylor. The OG Naylor is actually holding it down. And by the way, Bo Naylor, I like what he did. I loved what he did, and people may not even really notice this. I love that he brought back the red cleats.
Yeah.
He brought back the red cleats. I haven't seen him so long. I'm like, yo, I forgot how fire that is when you throw him with them Guardians uniforms. I liked them, and they was low-key high tops too, and he got the Nike wristband. He looked the part.
Hang on. Either Cantaspelli struck again or else the Guardians changed their name again. The Cleveland baseball team has again changed its name.
Oh, yeah, there is.
The Guardian.
I think Earl did graphic.
That is not Cantaspelli. That's Earl the Pearl.
That's Earl the Pearl?
Hey, you see how he clicked that
Earl
graphic
the Pearl
quick as
lost
hell.
some shine.
Well, hey, two things on Naylor real quick. One, he's 6 for 19 in his last 5 games.
Yeah.
That's 312 batting average.
Yeah.
Really good.
Yeah.
Mike Zunino had 5 hits all of May. I'm serious. In his last 5 games, Bo Naylor has more hits than Mike Zunino had all of May.
That's unbelievable.
He's 6 for 19. That's
unbelievable.
good. 312. Obviously, you take that, you run to the bank, you give him a massive contract if you do that for a career. That's not otherworldly like Luis Ariz in Miami. And it's still more hits than Mike Zunino has had in the entire month of May. I went back and looked. This was the 6th time the Guardians have scored double-digit runs this season. So the question, are bats contagious? I went back and I wanted to see, well, if they scored 10 runs, how they do in their following game. What do you think they averaged in the day or game after a 10-run or more outburst?
2.7.
You said 2.7? Well, I was expecting that as well.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give you the answers. On April 3rd, they scored 12 runs in a win over Oakland. They won 4-3 the following day. So that's above. On May 31st, they beat Baltimore 12-8. They followed that up with a 7-6 loss. They beat Boston 10-3. The next day, they scored 10 runs against Houston, and that was that crazy 14-inning, five come-from-behind win, so a little skewed. They still scored 10 runs. They followed that up with a 6-4 W over Houston again. And then they scored 12 runs against Arizona, and we don't really want to talk about the game after that. That is the game. They won 3-2, but it took them 11 innings to score 3 runs. So they're averaging 4.8 runs the day after a 10-run outburst, which is way higher than their season average. So I do think there is even a little bit of statistical proof on top of what we see and feel in the eye test and kind of the vibe check that they are hot. But then if we go 2 games out, then we don't want to talk about that. Trust me.
Right back.
Those numbers get real ugly real quick. So hopefully this is the start of something to come for the Guardians. They are now in first place. And they have 11 games left before the All-Star break, guys. What record do you think they have 1 game against KC. They go to Chicago for 3 games, and they have the Braves for 3. The Braves are playing unbelievable baseball right now, and they come back to Kansas City, or home for Kansas City for 4 more games. 11 games for the All-Star break. They are in first place. Earl, can we see the standings? They have a half-game lead over Minnesota. What do you think the division standings will look like come the All-Star break? Will it still be Guardians then Minnesota? And if so, by how many games will they be ahead of Minnesota for first place?
11 games, 45 and 44. I think it's probably. I think it'll be right around this. Did we get that graphic loaded? Can we talk? You want to talk about it now or later?
We bring them now. It's a phenomenal graphic if we have it ready.
So I just did a quick Google last night, and I actually had wanted, because Bulls talked all year long about how bad the division is, and has there ever been a team with a losing record in first place at the All-Star break? Well, it didn't go quite that. This is from MLB.com, and through the first 81 games, some awful records that wound up winning the division. If you look at, the Dodgers 10 years ago, from 38 to 92 is remarkable. Go down the list just a little bit. You see the 2022 Guardians. 40 and 41 last year after at the halfway point, and finished with 92 wins. And it's just kind of funny. I do think that the power is worse this year than last year, but a lot of the other things probably equate, and it just feels worse because I think expectations were higher. There was no expectations last year. So for them to be 40 and 41 probably kind of felt like about what they should be. And then they got red hot. All Tito teams get hot in July and August and really turned it on. And easily that could happen again. With the power situation, what it is, I still have a hard time believing this is a World Series contender, but clearly there's the evidence that you could be 40 and 41 at the midway point and still win 90 games. At the All-Star break, you could be hovering around 500 and still win 90 games. There's evidence that it's easily doable.
And real quick before you go, G, those were teams who ended up winning the division, not necessarily the first place team in the division.
That's exactly right.
So the Bulls, when Bulls says, I'm not sure if a first place team has ever been sub 500 midway through the point and won the division.
Yeah.
That's not an apples to apples graphic, but to your point, it's not unheard of for a team who struggled in the first half, catch fire in the second, win the division and make a deep run in the playoffs.
Yeah.
The Guardians remind me of remember them old school Memphis Grizzlies teams with Zach Randolph,
Marc Gasol,
Grind,
Tony Allen, Mike Conley.
And the Grindhouse, there was always a 2, 3, 4 seed. They was tough to play. You knew what you was gonna get from them, but it was just tough to go in. But when it came to the playoffs, you just knew they just didn't have enough. Like, you look at the stats, you be like, wow, Gasol is a defensive player of the year. You be like, Randolph had 20 and 10 like he always do. Mike Conley got 10 assists, 17 points. But then you look at the stats, you be like, well, that's just not enough for some reason. It's not going to get it done. And I look at the Guardians kind of the same way. Like, every year you can look at them and they could be 500, little above, little below, going into the All-Star break. They'll get hot. They'll get to the playoffs. But, like, do they really, really, really got enough? Like, when you get, are they putting fear in people? Like, no. I don't want them to play the Guardians. I think it's the opposite. I think when the Guardians get in the playoffs, you're like, hey, they play defense, but guess what? It's defense. You ain't supposed to be making errors anyway. They got some pitchers, but let's get to the second or third pitcher. And we know we could always count on the fact that we're going to have more power than them. So for me, I think the Guardians have a nice a nice team. I think they got a team that can do something and make the playoffs and win the division. But like Jason said, I can't really go out and be like, oh, these guys are going to really make a deep run because there's deficiencies in the way they put the roster together.
And there's context we have to look at here. If the Guardians today were in the American League West, they'd be 10 games below Texas in 4th place. If they were in the AL East, they'd be in dead last place. They'd be in 6th place, 16 games behind the Rays. So because they're in first place in the AL Central, we said it all year long, this is not a surprise. The AL Central sucks. If they were in any other division in the American League, as of today, they'd be completely out of it. They're not even in contention for a wild card spot with their sub-500 record. I mean, they would be 6th place below the last place Red Sox in the American League East. However, they've benefited playing in the AL Central. When you play in the AL Central, you are literally never dead, unless you're the Kansas City Royals, who are non-existent. And like you said, on Monday or Tuesday, they're a quadruple A team.
Yeah, they're a 4A team.
They're so bad. So I don't say that to be negative about the Guardians. I say that just to put in context where they are. I do think, as you look ahead, we know Terry Francona's teams get better in the summer months. We know that some of the guys in this lineup are better than they've been playing. Andres Jimenez, better than he's been playing. Jose Ramirez has been better of late. I don't think we've seen a typical Jose season to date yet. Josh Bell can't be any worse. He literally can't be any worse. And I think Bo Naylor, by the fact that he's alive playing, is an upgrade over Mike Zunino. So when these pieces kind of come together, there's a lot of hope for this Guardians team to not just take a little step forward and end up being, 84-78 and win the division based on the fact that everyone else around them is terrible. I think they have the pieces to come together, especially with the young pitching and Williams, Bybee, Allen, Bieber. If McKenzie can come back this season, I wouldn't expect it, but if he can, you have the pitching pieces in place, you have the pieces in the lineup that in theory should play better as the season goes along to at least put an ounce of fear. I'm not saying this is the big bad boogie monster of the American League, but it's also not a team you see on the playoff schedule and just be like, oh, that's a cakewalk. Let's look ahead and pencil ourselves into the next round.
No. This season is a little more – it's just a little more intriguing because even if they make the postseason, the thing I'm excited about is, guess what? You're going to have potentially three rookies pitching in the postseason, right? So we talked about how great experience was. That we wanted to get the experience for Garland and those guys and Mobley when they lost the playing game to the Hawks. And people talk about how that kind of stunted their growth a little bit, set everything back a year. But this year, one of the silver linings is you're going to see how many young guys come back again that got experience last year, the Quans, the Jimenezes of the world. Now you got three new pitchers. Allen, Bybee, and Gavin Williams are going to get an opportunity to pitch in the postseason as well. And that'll be exciting to a certain extent to see how those guys do because I don't think McKenzie's coming back. So you'll get the chance to see what they look like under those lights.
Jason, you haven't heard anything that would make you believe McKenzie will pitch again this year, have you?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
No, he's waiting on a second opinion. I think he's getting a second opinion. More than and really it's do you have surgery or not? I think. I don't want to speak out of turn here. Do you have Tommy John surgery or is there a way to rehab this without it? And regardless, whether you have it now or a month from now, you're going to miss all of next year anyway. So you might as well take your time on this and see if it's really necessary or not. But, yeah, he's not coming back anytime soon.
We talked about this when McKenzie was coming back from injury the first time.
Yeah.
And I know Jay was sitting here and Jay made the point. When he was in the dugout, it seemed like he was kind of the energizer buddy the team was feeding off. And even the offense, he just seemed to be a locker room guy, a clubhouse guy that everyone loved to be around. And whether or not that actually translates directly to on-field results, there's no way to actually tell. But it seemed like they started playing a little better. Gavin Williams comes up last week. His first start, okay, not great.
Yeah.
His second start, phenomenal.
Yeah.
Do you think he has the potential to be a guy that the team kind of galvanizes around as, hey, this guy's potential is through the damn roof, and he's on our side now? It's not the Otanis, it's not the Ellie De La Cruzes, it's our guy, Gavin Williams. Do you think he has that potential to kind of be a galvanizing factor for this team?
Yeah, but
forward?
probably not this year. I think it's a lot to put on a guy who's made 2 career starts, going into his 3rd career start. He's going to have growing pains just like everybody else. He's going to get hit around. They all do at this stage. He's going to have up and down performances. But, you got to remember McKenzie's in, year 3 now? So it's easier for him to sort of be that guy because he's more established. But they are what they are right now. And this is a young rotation. Obviously, it's going to be a young rotation for forever, really, with this team and the way that they operate. So I think they are going to rely heavily on Gavin Williams. We've talked at length on the show about Bieber and what's going to happen with him, and I still think they move him, and that's going to put even more pressure on Gavin Williams. It wouldn't surprise me if they go to a six-man rotation for a little while. When Cal Quantrill comes back, it alleviates some of the innings off all of these young guys so they don't get overworked. But, yeah, I mean, the future on Gavin Williams obviously is to be that guy. I just don't know that you can ask him to be that this early in his career.
Oh, trust me, McNuggets. Oh, trust me. So this is setting it up to be like cover of Baseball America and
that's kind of why I'm
cover
asking.
Sports Illustrated, where they talk about these three young arms. Get ready for everybody that got three young pitchers. They compare them to the Braves. Get ready, it's coming. Everybody wants Glavine, Maddox, and Smoltz. It's going to be here. And they'll talk about they're 12 years old, they're 13, they barely got library cards, and they're the hottest things moving. Now, I don't know if they're going to translate that into some wins. I don't know if that's going to be a pennant, but they'll be exciting. They'll be the new darling. People will talk about them a lot in the rotation because it's very rare to have three guys up. And I'm surprised. I'm going to give you credit. I'm surprised the Guardians even did it. I thought maybe one of them, when I seen Allen, I thought, man, you know what? That I was salty because I'm like, well, we ain't seeing Bobby then. Then Bobby came up, and I was like, ooh, like, Gavin Williams, he might be their whole other. No, they brought all three of them up, and I was like, wow. And it looks like that was part of the plan.
Oh, it was part of it. They had to. They had to. Number one, because you got to make a decision on Bieber, and you got to see if these other guys are ready. Number two, it was time. They were. You have to have an opportunity in the big league rotation, but at the same time, like, when they're ready, you got to find room for these guys, and it's worked out. And this is how they do it. Like, there's another wave behind them that's a couple of years away, and this is how they're able to maintain with the payroll that they are and be as competitive as they are, is the way that they're able to produce this pitching.
All right, what's up?
So we're talking about these young, talented pitchers, and we get it. They're rookies, but if the Guardians make the playoffs, they're going to play a major role. We know what the changes was to the rules for Major League Baseball this year. But with Bo Naylor also being up in the big leagues, who's caught for all three of them, does that help with the learning curve? Does that help make things a little easier for these rookie pitchers?
Yeah, I think for sure it does, because this isn't day one where you have a catcher trying to learn all these new guys. They've all thrown to him, so he knows what they like to throw in certain situations and certain counts. Now, the scouting reports on the hitters change, but in terms of the comfortability of the pitcher and being able to get into a rhythm, it's such a delicate thing. I know it sounds silly, but that's why you have some pitchers that have had personal catchers, because guys just enjoy throwing to – they know how pitchers think, and they just are able to fall into a rhythm. So I think Bo having come up with these guys is I won't say it's a huge advantage, but it's absolutely it sort of fast tracks the learning curve from the minors to the majors.
And let me ask you this question: how much? I remember back in the day, my dad talking about just the simple fact that pitchers back then didn't. He came up at a time where it started to be where pitchers didn't hit anymore, because he talked about how he used to pitch and how much. Of a mental game it was when you're thinking about throwing pitches and getting guys out. It was just rough to be concentrating on batting. How much are catchers now calling their own games? Like, how does that happen a lot? Like, what level of input do they have? Like, is it just like he's up there calling what he wants to call, or is it more of a collaboration type thing between the manager, the pitcher, and the catcher?
I think most instances it's the catcher and pitcher calling the game. I don't think it happens very often where you get bench input. Maybe in a situation like this where it's a young guy, and I don't know the answer with Bo.
Ohtani calls his own pitches.
Yeah.
He's got that little thing on his bicep that he pushes a button and it buzzes the catcher, and he's like, I'm throwing fastball. Boom.
Yeah.
Catcher knows.
And, but a lot of times, again, when you work with a guy for a certain amount of time, you know what they want to throw. And I think it depends on the relationship. Sometimes if it's a young pitcher, you have to rely on your veteran catcher, and sometimes the other way around. Certainly if it's a veteran pitcher and a young catcher, the pitcher is going to tell you what he's throwing. But I don't think that there's much bench involvement on pitch sequences and stuff like that.
That's a little known. That's a little that isn't talked about a lot, which is a lot. Just the fact that, like, you're thinking about it, like kind of like a point guard in basketball, like. You know, does Chris Paul call every play? Like, is he calling, or is it just a situation where it's a flow? Like, coach might want some out of a timeout, or they'll just go with just basically some different.
Yeah, sometimes a lot of times coaches will make the call from the bench.
Yeah.
And so, since you mentioned it, in the finals, the first year LeBron came back in the finals, Blatt was calling plays from the bench, and LeBron was just coming down and running whatever he wanted. He wasn't even paying attention. I had people on the Warriors, because by the time you get to the finals, everybody knows everybody else's plays.
Yeah, there's no secrets.
Right. And they were laughing. I had people on the Warriors telling me, the coaching staff, they were laughing because Blatt was like calling plays, and LeBron wasn't even looking over there. He was just coming down and running whatever he wanted. and everyone thinks, oh, whatever. I don't even get in the Blatt hole. And that's not. I mean, that's happened before too, where guys feel like they're on the floor. They have a feel for what's going on and what's going to work or not. But that was one instance.
That boy David Blatt, man, he just did. Listen, he felt like he had a whole nother program he had signed up for, and he get LeBron back, and then for the simple fact that LeBron went to the finals and had Delly and David Blatt, with major input, major roles, and won. That's amazing to me.
So to bring this back to the Guardians and cap it before we move on, they play the Royals. Final game of the series tonight. Bieber's on the mound versus Zach Greinke, who I think might be 68 years old at this. I think he's on his 27th season.
And
he can still pitch.
He's not bad.
Still pitch.
So my question is, scored 14 last night. They scored 2 in the opener. Their over-under line is 5.5 tonight. Would you take the over or the under for tonight's game?
I would take the under.
Under?
I think Greinke's ERA is right around 4.
Greinke has not been bad this year. He's been
on a better
average.
team, he could have a better record. But I think 4 is probably where I would land on it.
Yeah, I would say 4. Greinke, like you said, he still could pitch. Like, man, he been in the game forever, and he still played for the Royals. Like, that's
he went from the Royals to like 7 other teams,
and they came back to the Royals. Like,
he's the only person that ever wanted to go back to Kansas City,
like
sampling L.A. and Phoenix and all the other party cities.
The Greinke stories are legendary, though. He's his own dude.
Weird
man.
guy, but good for him. I'll take the over. I'm gonna go with my bats are contagious theory, and I'm riding with Bo Naylor. I don't care what anyone says. 6 for 19 in his last 5 games, and if he's hitting, I do think it kind of affects everyone else.
Well, I think he's got 5 hits in his last 3 games.
Yeah.
So, maybe he's starting to figure it out and string some things together. Obviously, we need more at bats to see. Yeah. I think he struck out in every game. Little alarming, little concerning. Hopefully, that gets under control. He should walk more. The more comfortability he sees, the more he figures out Major League pitching. He'll be a guy who gets on base a little bit more than your normal catcher, hopefully. But yeah, it's good signs for him that maybe he's starting to settle in a little bit.
He's not a bad athlete as catcher. Like,
he's
the play he made the other night. Did you guys talk about that?
We did. The pirouette throw.
He's not a bad athlete, man. He's not a stick in the mud, bro.
There aren't many catchers in the league who can throw that guy out.
That pirouette throw was
I have a
crazy.
theory. So he's so young, right? In not just in real life, but in catching terms, because he wasn't always a catcher coming through the system. His knees are still springy. I think if you catch enough games in Major League Baseball, just the toll of catching, I think there's less than 5 catchers, starters and backups in Major League Baseball that can make that throw.
You could be right.
That is completely unfounded by science. That is just me knowing that it hurts your knees, it kills your knees.
Just an incredible play.
Unreal, To
not only catch it, but then spin and still throw him out.
Dot. I mean, that was a dot.
Yeah,
that was crazy.
Yeah.
I feel like that should be a special move. Like just like a Street Fighter, finish him.
If Zanino's back there, that ball's in the stand.
Oh, he doesn't get a glove on it.
Runners at third.
Here we got some breaking news.
Yeah, man, we got a couple things for breaking news right now.
Hit us.
First things first, breaking news on the Cleveland Guardians. Steve, you could take tag board 4. This is from Mandy Bell. The Guardians have optioned Logan Allen to AAA and recalled Michael Kelly. DeMarlo Hill will manage again today out of an abundance of caution for Tito. Just came out within the last 10 minutes.
Real quick, who's Michael Kelly? I'm not familiar with who that is in their minor league system.
I don't know. It's probably a reliever.
Allen pitched yesterday, so it makes sense that he'd be optioned down if they need an extra arm in the bullpen. I won't talk about someone I don't know. I've never heard of Michael Kelly in my life.
I thought that was like the Browns practice squad running back.
Yeah, that's John Kelly.
He's probably his cousin.
He's probably a reliever. I mean, you got a decision to make with Quantrill coming back, but I have a hard time believing Logan Allen's out of the rotation.
I mean, he didn't pitch great yesterday. I mean, threw 98 pitches through 3.5 innings, but
Yeah.
he didn't give any runs.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I don't know. I mean,
interesting. They have too many pitchers right now.
they do.
They got to figure out the rotation because they have 6-7 guys who are competing for starts, and you can't go to a 7-man
Right.
rotation. That's just not plausible.
That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Interesting. Yeah. Earl, what's the next one?